Let me tell you a horror story. The setting is a small A-frame cabin in the woods outside of Plainfield, Wisconsin. Yes, that Plainfield, the infamous home of serial killer Ed Gein. The date is August 8th, 1981, the time somewhere past midnight. Three teens are huddled together inside of this cabin, armed with hatchets and kitchen utensils, staring through the sliding glass door, the only thing that separates them from the 7-foot tall creature that has been stalking them for the past 3 days. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am just another tinfoil hat. Welcome to my show. Today, we are going to be discussing the absolutely fascinating case of the other monster of Plainfield, or as I like to call it, the Plainfield Peeper. On August 6th of 1981, three teenagers arrived at this small A-frame cabin on the outskirts of Plainfield, Wisconsin. Now, the three teens were all members of the Brem family. They were sisters Patty, who was 19, and Kim, who was 15, along with their 15-year-old cousin Dave. Now, the cabin actually belonged to Dave's mother, and apparently was arranged so that it was a garage on the first level, and then a living space above that, with a deck that also adjoined the second story. So they arrived on Thursday, got settled, and then decided to walk to a pond that was nearby. Now, while they made their way to the pond, they claimed to hear strange growls or yells that they couldn't identify coming from the woods. Dave was quoted in the Racine Shoreline Leader as saying that it yelled 10 times in a row. Now, apparently they didn't really think much of it. They couldn't identify these yells, growls, whatever they were, but they figured it was just some animal, and it promptly left their minds. Until the next morning, when Kim woke up before the others and decided to go outside, when she saw what she thought was somebody watching her from the nearby woods. She watched it watch her for about 10 minutes when it began to approach her. And this is when she realized that it wasn't your typical run-of-the-mill human being. No, instead of your average human creeper, Kim described seeing a strange creature, which she described as being about 7 feet tall, broad shouldered, and completely covered in thick, slick, white hair. At this point, however, she didn't stick around to see what else she could see. No, she ran back into the cabin crying, and her cousin Dave, again not really taking her seriously, told her to go back to bed. Later that morning, however, Liz saw it again. This time she went outside, which I'm going to say, quite a bit of bravery there. You wake up first thing in the morning and see this bizarre creature outside of your cabin. A couple hours later, you're back out there. And she was rewarded with a much closer encounter. This time she saw the being standing near their car, which was only about 20 to 30 feet away from her. Now she could see it in quite a bit more detail, although she claimed that she couldn't make out any other facial features except for two huge, black, hollow eyes. Now, Liz ran back into the cabin and finally convinced her sister Patty to go out onto the second story balcony and take a look. Now, the creature was still standing next to the car, staring up at Patty. By the time she convinced Dave to come out and see this bizarre being, it was completely gone. Now, although Dave didn't see anything, both girls were so adamant that they had seen something strange that it was at this point that they did call the local police. An officer came out, looked around, found nothing, and promptly left. Later that night after dark, the thing showed up again. Now, finally, Dave had his encounter. He actually claimed to have seen the creature at the edge of the woods, the lower portion of its body obscured by brush. When he noticed it, and apparently the thing noticed him noticing it, the being, as he said, bent sideways, ducked, and shot towards the house. Dave promptly retreated and locked the door. However, for the remainder of the night, all three kids claimed to hear noises both outside the cabin and in the lower garage, which included crashing noises and doors slamming. Finally, when the sun rose, the creature apparently stopped its rampage, and the three slept until the early afternoon. Later that morning, Kim had another sighting of the creature while she was apparently putting on makeup outside of the cabin. And a little bit after that, Dave decided to go on a walk. Now, I know this might seem like an odd decision given the fact that they, seem to be under siege by some strange 7 foot tall, Bigfoot like creature, but it actually turns out that he missed the action. While Dave was away on his walk, the two sisters who were still in the cabin heard a clawing and pounding on the outside of the structure. They escaped, got in the car, and retrieved Dave from where he was walking in the woods. When they finally got back, the being was gone. Now, from this point on, the three kids claimed to go into lockdown mode. They claimed that as they were staying up Saturday night, they saw the shadow of a large animal walking back and forth, and believed that a second being joined the first and even climbed the stairs late Saturday night. Dave at this point swore at the creature, which then responded by breaking one of the garage door windows. Now, it's really intriguing because, as Dave pointed out, it could have gotten in. There was nothing stopping him. Now, yet again, the kids stayed up all Saturday night, fell asleep Sunday morning, and then stayed awake through Sunday night, which proved to be the final escalation of the phenomenon. The three had armed themselves with whatever they could find, which included hatchets, axes, and kitchen utensils, and stayed awake together in the A-frame cabin, waiting for the inevitable return of the beast. Turns out they didn't have to wait long. At this point, the being came closer than it ever had before, actually coming up onto the second story deck and, in full view through the sliding glass doors, paced back and forth, hours through the night. As soon as the sun rose, the creature or creatures, again, they thought that there was another one, kind of lurking on the outskirts, left, and shortly thereafter, the three Brems did as well. Now, following the incident, all three young witnesses experienced intense fear about what they had gone through, including nightmares. And it got to the point that the girl's father and one of his friends actually returned to the cabin the next Saturday to see if they could find any evidence of anything strange happening. And as it turns out, they believed that they did. They claimed to find 11-inch long human like footprints with a narrow heel and 6 toes, as well as 2 hairs. They claimed to make a cast of one of the prints, but as to what became of that evidence, who knows? Interestingly enough, they also said that there were only 2 prints in a line that were actually in the mud surrounding the pond, and that the rest were in the water. Now, what I love about this case is the absolute horror movie setup that we are seeing here. I mean, it reads like, the description of some old B movie in a small A-frame cabin in the woods surrounding the home of one of the most deviant serial killers of all time. 3 teenagers are besieged by a bizarre Bigfoot-like creature, the culmination of which has them arming themselves with hatchets and kitchen utensils. I mean, it's fantastic, it's weird, and it's in my home state of Wisconsin. Now, aside from the fact that this would be an excellent, super campy horror movie, there are some very intriguing aspects research-wise to this case as well. One of the first things that really stood out to me is this very clear pattern of escalation, which we see in this case, which calls to mind, to me at least, kind of more long-running paranormal encounters, such as poltergeist or UFO contactee phenomena. Now, the distinction here that I'm making is kind of between these one-off short sightings. You see a Sasquatch cross the road, you see a strange light in the sky, fly-by encounter, or something like that, and then longer periods of contact. Now, in this case, we have a kind of restricted time frame. Again, this happened over a long weekend. However, you see, again, this beautiful pattern of escalation, which starts, with the witnesses hearing this strange growling in the woods. Weird, but ultimately not too concerning. Then a visual of the being far away. Then it comes closer. Then being spotted by another witness. Then another. Then appearing to try and get in the establishment. Then stalking at close range. Yet again, we have one of my new favorite concepts, that of the phenomenon, kind of witnessing the witness. In this case, the first visual was of this being just staring at Kim. And then, too, this concept that no other facial features but the eyes are visible. And this, to me, doubles down on this kind of symbol, this aspect of watching being a key part of the anomalous experience, the eyes being the only visible facial feature. Now, many researchers, including one of my personal favorites, John Keel, as well as Joshua Cutchin and Timothy Renner in their fantastic series of books Where the Footprints End, have developed the link of poltergeist phenomena and Sasquatch. And I would say it's very relevant to say here that the witnesses were all teenagers, classic poltergeist agents. Even the first to see the being, Kim, is as much of a cliche poltergeist agent as you can get, a 15-year-old girl. And you also do see some very classic poltergeist manifestations, even though I should probably say you do hear some very classic poltergeist manifestations, including doors slamming, scratching, pounding noises. It's just that in this case, the poltergeist manifestations were accompanied by a Sasquatch-like being. Now, on the topic specifically of Sasquatch, it is very interesting to see such a specific description for the creature's fur as slick and not shaggy. Now, of course, white-furred Sasquatches make an appearance in Bigfoot lore. However, in this case, the idea of this slick, pale entity with dark, hollow eyes truly conjures up a nearly ghostly image. Now, something which I would absolutely love to know would be the specifics of the trail of footprints, which predominantly appeared to be in the pond. Now, did it start in the pond? Did it end there? Or was this the center of kind of a longer track which just couldn't be traced to its termination? I don't know. Now, this connection to a waterway is intriguing in the grander scope of the paranormal and waterways, and calls to mind the termination of Millard Faber's Sandusky Sasquatch encounter, which ended with the being diving into a stream. Well, if you enjoyed this episode on the Plainfield Peeper, please like, and if you're new to this field of crop circles, go ahead and subscribe to see what weirdness the future may have in store. Till then, you can keep up with whatever else I might possibly have going on my free blog at patreon.com/justanothertinfoilhat. And for today, I am Zelia Edgar, signing off.
Doing.